The humid air of Tortuga clung to Captain Rhys Sterling like a second skin, heavy with the scent of rum, salt, and desperation. For weeks, his crew, the notorious Sable Serpent, had been hunted by the formidable British Royal Navy. Their last raid, a botched attempt on a Spanish galleon, had left them with empty holds and mounting debts. Rhys, a man whose charm was as sharp as his cutlass, found himself cornered, his reputation as a ruthless yet honorable pirate hanging by a thread. His salvation, ironically, came from the man who was also his greatest rival, Captain Blackheart, a brute with a reputation for cruelty that made Rhys's exploits seem like child's play. Blackheart had an offer, a macabre bargain that promised to solve all of Rhys's problems. A bounty on a high-born Spanish woman, Isabella de Leon, a governor's daughter from Port Royal. She was en route to a forced marriage with a wealthy English merchant, a political alliance her family desperately needed. Blackheart had her in his grasp, and for a price, Rhys's prized ship, the Sea Witch, he would hand her over. "She's a prize, Rhys," Blackheart rasped, his eyes glinting. "Worth more than any gold. Her father will pay handsomely to have her back." The offer was repulsive, trading a human life for a ship, yet the desperate pleas of his crew, their empty stomachs, and the threat of a noose made him consider the unthinkable. A storm was gathering, both in the sky and within Rhys's conscience. He watched the horizon, the setting sun painting the clouds in shades of blood orange and violet, a grim premonition of the deal he was about to make. He made the deal. Days later, Blackheart delivered his prize in chains. Isabella was not what Rhys expected. She was not a cowering noblewoman, but a firebrand. Her silken gown was torn, her hair was a tangled mess, and her eyes, dark and furious, held a defiance that mirrored his own. Her wrists were raw, where the manacles had chafed her skin. Rhys's heart, a thing he thought had long turned to stone, ached with a strange, unfamiliar pang. "Let me go," she demanded, her voice a low growl that held no hint of fear. "My father will see you hanged." "Your father cares more for coin and political gain than he does for you," Rhys retorted, the words sharper than he intended. "I'm not the one who put you in chains, mi alma. I'm the one who bought you." The declaration hung in the air, heavy with unspoken truths. He had not only bought her freedom from Blackheart, but had also bought the right to her life. He watched her struggle, a tempest of rage and humiliation. He knew that to survive, she would need to be stronger than she had ever been. He also knew that this woman was not just a means to an end. She was a storm waiting to be unleashed, and he, for the first time in a long time, was intrigued. The bargain was sealed, but the true cost was yet to be paid. The Sea Witch was now a floating cage for a woman who despised its captain. Isabella refused to eat, refused to speak, her silence a shield against her tormentor. But Rhys, a master of observation, saw the vulnerability behind her defiance. He saw the tremble in her hands when she thought no one was looking, the way her gaze lingered on the open sea, a silent plea for freedom. He had her manacles removed and a respectable cabin assigned to her. The crew, initially wary of the lady captive, soon saw the change in their captain's demeanor. He was less ruthless, his orders laced with an unusual empathy. When a squall hit, he found her on deck, soaked to the bone, staring at the tumultuous waves. Her fear was palpable, a stark contrast to her earlier defiance. "It's not so different from a storm on land," Rhys said, his voice softer than she had ever heard. "Just more honest." His words surprisingly resonated with her. She'd been raised in a world of deceit and political storms, where the true danger was never the one you saw coming. He told her stories of the sea, of the constellations, and of the freedom that lay beyond the horizon. He never spoke of his past, nor did he explain the true reason he had taken her. He simply existed, a quiet presence that was slowly chipping away at her defenses. Isabella began to see him not as a brute, but as a man of contradictions. He was a thief who honored his word. He was a captor who protected her. He taught her to read the stars, to tie a knot, and to feel the rhythm of the ship under her feet. She, in turn, began to understand the weight of his responsibilities. The crew depended on him. The ship was their home, and he their protector. One night she found him on deck, a map spread out before him, a lantern casting long shadows on his face. He looked tired, the lines around his eyes deeper than usual. "What is it?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. He looked at her, a flicker of surprise in his eyes. "We're running out of supplies. Our last trade route was intercepted by the British." "Your crew. They're hungry," she stated, her heart clenching. She had seen their faces, their gaunt expressions. He nodded, a sigh escaping his lips. "They are. This life. It's a tightrope walk." In that moment, their roles shifted. She was no longer just his captive. She was his ally. She proposed a solution, a risky one, but a solution nonetheless. She knew of a hidden supply cache in a small cove near Port Royal, a secret her father used for black market dealings. It was a perilous journey back to the place where she was to be married, but it was their only chance. "You'd do that?" he asked, a hint of awe in his voice. "I may be your prisoner," she replied, a faint smile on her lips, "but I am not a coward, and I am tired of being hungry." Their unspoken alliance was now solidified. They were no longer pirate and captive, but two souls caught in a storm, working together to find a way to shore. The promise of a bounty from her father was still a possibility, but a new, more powerful currency was emerging between them: trust. The journey to the hidden cove was fraught with peril. They sailed under the cloak of night, navigating through treacherous coral reefs that seemed to claw at the hull of the Sea Witch. Isabella, with a map etched into her memory, guided Rhys with a precision that was almost supernatural. Her whispered directions, "Starboard now, there's a shoal to the port side," were followed without question. The air was thick with tension, a silent understanding passing between them with every shift of the wind, every creak of the ship's wood. They were no longer two separate entities, but a single, fluid unit, their fates intertwined. They reached the cove under the pale light of the moon, its silver glow revealing the secluded, sandy beach. The cache was there, just as Isabella had described, a hidden trove of salted meats, fresh water barrels, and even some much-needed medical supplies. As the crew eagerly began to load the provisions, a low, grating sound cut through the silence. A British patrol ship, a ghost in the fog, appeared on the horizon. The unmistakable gleam of a lantern on its mast sent a cold dread through the crew. They had been followed. A fierce battle ensued. Cannons roared, their sound echoing off the sheer cliffs, and the air was thick with the acrid smell of gunpowder and the salty spray of the sea. Rhys, his cutlass a blur of silver, fought with a ferocity she had never seen before. He was not just a captain, but a protector, a lion defending his pride. He moved with a practiced brutality, a man born for chaos, his eyes narrowed in a fierce concentration. Isabella, instead of cowering in a corner, found herself in the thick of the fight. The training she had received as a noblewoman, first aid for minor ailments, tending to the injured after a hunting accident, now served a higher purpose. She moved from one wounded crewman to another, her hands steady, her mind clear of the panic that once ruled her. She was no longer the terrified noblewoman, but a force of nature. A woman who had found her strength in the most unlikely of places. She saw Rhys get cornered, a British soldier about to strike him from behind. Without a second thought, she grabbed a discarded pistol, its weight unfamiliar in her hand, and fired. The shot went wide, but the loud report and the flash of light distracted the soldier long enough for Rhys to overpower him. He looked at her, his eyes wide with surprise and a flash of something she couldn't name. "You saved my life," he said, his voice filled with a reverence that took her breath away. "It seems we're even then," she replied, a triumphant smile on her face, a hint of the firebrand she truly was shining through. They managed to escape, leaving the British ship a burning wreck in their wake. As the Sea Witch sailed away, the crew, their bellies full and their spirits high, cheered for their captain and the woman who had become their unlikely hero. The battle had not only secured their survival, but had forged an unbreakable bond. The sun rose on a new day, casting a golden glow on the Caribbean waters. Rhys stood at the helm, a new map laid out before him, not of a bounty, but of a future. He looked at Isabella, who was watching the sunrise, a sense of peace on her face. Her chains were gone, not just from her wrists, but from her spirit. The life she had been born into, a life of duty and political bargaining, was a distant memory. The future was unwritten, a blank parchment waiting for her to fill it. "The bounty, your father's money," he began, his voice low, his gaze never leaving hers. "It's yours. The deal. It's off." She turned to him, her eyes wide with disbelief. "What?" "I can't hand you over, Isabella," he said, the words a raw confession. "Not for any amount of gold. The true prize was never the ransom. It was this." He gestured to the ship, the crew, and the life they had built together. "It was you." Isabella's heart pounded in her chest. She had gone from a prisoner to an ally, from a captive to a confidant, and now she was something more. He had not only saved her from a life of political servitude, but had given her a new life, a life of freedom and adventure, a life where her worth was not measured in gold or political alliances, but in her own strength. Rhys took a step closer, his gaze intense, a silent question in his eyes. "I am a pirate, Isabella. My life is on the sea. But if you'll have me, I want you by my side. I want to build a life with you. I want you to bear me heirs." His words, a declaration of love and a promise of a future, hung in the salty air. Isabella, no longer a damsel in distress but a woman in charge of her own destiny, reached out and took his hand. "Then let's start with a kingdom," she said, her eyes shining with tears and a fierce joy. "A kingdom on the high seas." The Sea Witch sailed towards the horizon, a new and powerful alliance forged on its decks. It was not a story of a prince and a princess, but of a pirate and a lady, two broken souls who found a home in each other, ready to face any storm the sea might bring. If you enjoyed this story and want to see more like it, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us create more exciting adventures.